Hello one and all, Jasper here, and I take back everything I said at the end of the last video. Please bring back the Kristen and Alicent sex scenes. You can end as many episodes as you want on them rolling in the hay. Just please, for the love of God, never end another episode like you did here. I'll stop wasting your time. Let's get this started so that it can end. We open up with a revolutionary scene. The first ever instance in the entire franchise where in a conflict between the Brackens and Blackwoods, the Brackens don't come off as the assholes. In pretty much all of George's books, the Brackens are always despicable and unlikable. So it's nice that at least for one singular moment, they're not the worst. As for the battle itself, since we really don't get to see it, I can't comment too much. Only that, technically, this battle happened after Daemon had taken over Harrenhal, which isn't that important, but I'll probably be able to comment more on the next episode. We next see the Cargill twins being buried, and I know Dragonstone isn't as nice as most castles and lands, but you're telling me they don't have a better place to bury them except at some random spot on the beach? Rhaenys comes up and says some dumb shit like Otto wouldn't allow this, which, while we, the audience, know she's right, I see little reason she would say this, especially since in the first season, he ordered the Lord Commander, Harold Westerling, to do just this. Secondly, it almost fucking works, so in a way, it was a brilliant idea. She continues to be kind of dumb when she puts the idea in Rhaenyra's head that if she speaks to Alicent, then peace might be reached. This is immensely idiotic, even in the best case scenario, but I'll tackle that plot point at the end of this episode. I also find it hilarious that she labels the men around her as the ones who seek bloodshed, when this bitch has the highest body count with a 99% civilian casualty rate. The option for peace died when Luke was killed. Stop trying to attain it. Next scene we have Criston Cole, and a funny little fact, he is actually wearing the book-accurate necklace for the Hand of the King. In the books, it's not a hand pin that Otto or even Eddard in the original series wear, so it's interesting to bring it back now all of a sudden. I honestly preferred the pin to the necklace, but I guess they brought the necklace for Criston because you can't put a pin through armor, so the necklace works. However, it looks much less ridiculous than I pictured it in the books. Criston walks to the small council meeting and finds out he has some new brothers serving with him. He comments on this to Aegon, showing he was not made aware. Naming someone to the King's Guard without the Lord Commander's blessing is unlikely, but possible. As for those being named being a part of Aegon's frat party group, even I would find this unlikely, but maybe they are skilled enough at comment to somewhat justify it. The names that Aegon rises to Kingsguard is not mentioned in the books during the dance, though it is said he named them so they have a lot of freedom in regards to who these people are. At the small council itself, we get some details about the Battle of the Burning Mill. They mentioned Lord Samwell Blackwood being slain by Lord Aemys Bracken. Well, they don't say Aemys killed him, but in the books, Aemys did kill him. However, they seem to fail to mention that Aemys was also killed, being shot in the eye by a weirwood arrow allegedly fired from Samwell's sister. Also, it said the Brackens were the aggressors, but it was the Blackwoods who attacked the Brackens in the books. While the small council argues, Tywin Lannister seems to mock Maester Orwyle in the Arts of War, asking which chain denotes the art of war. That would be the Iron Links, and presumably, as an Archmaester, he would have studied it, so shut up Tywin, I don't see you walking around with an iron chain, you coin counter. Next we get to Criston's plan of action, to ride out with the men of the castle and garrison. They make it sound like he is leaving with a very small army, but I guess it depends on what your idea of small is. He had at his command in the books 100 knights, 500 men-at-arms, and 3 times as many sellswords, making a total of 2,400 men, which is nothing to sneeze at. To put it in perspective, I would say your average High Lord, that being the likes of the Brackens and the Blackwoods, would be about 2,000 give or take. You have some extremes like the Hightowers who can possibly field as much as 10,000 men, and the Freys who can field 4,000, but more often than not, 2,000 seems to be the magical number for High Lords. So, Alicent commenting that they would be destroyed by the first stronghold they meet would be inaccurate, as they would be on equal footing or even more numerous. But maybe he is bringing far less, as numbers are not given in the show. Either way, while I would like to go into more detail on Kristen's plan and how so far it's different, I feel as though that needs to be saved for the next episode. Next scene we have Rhaenyra speaking to Missari, and it confirms that she did warn the guards which saved Rhaenyra's life in the assassination attempt. So that just means all my criticism of that scene in the previous episode were well-founded. Because she saved Rhaenyra, she asked for a spot on her council. While never officially appointed onto the court, she was pretty much the mistress, of whispers in the books. So nothing big here, though like I said, she was already in really good standing with Rhaenyra and Daemon, so she wouldn't need to save their lives to get this appointment. The next scene technically isn't inaccurate, but I just want to comment real fast. Rhaena, shut the fuck up. You pretty much are useless. If you don't want to be useless, then go claim a dragon. Until then, do as you're told, okay? Daemon finally makes it to the Riverlands and takes Harrenhal without a fight, as the Castellan submits immediately. While I can't say it's book inaccurate since we don't know many of the finer details and how the castle was taken, I will say it seems very unlikely that Daemon would have dismounted Caraxes and then slowly explored the empty halls of Harrenhal. That's just asking to be jumped by more than one person and taken prisoner. Though luckily for him, the entire castle has one guard. I know it was lightly garrisoned because Larry's was in King's Landing, but still, all these castles seem to lack any sort of guards or protections, for fuck's sake. Real fast as well, on the topic of the Castellan calling Daemon Prince, it just feels wrong no matter how you look at it. He is the king consort, so I would assume he would still be addressed as Your Grace. Eddard addressed Cersei as Your Grace, so I think Daemon is correct here, and this guy shouldn't have ever even assumed to address him as a prince. Daemon brings up the topic of repairing the castle, which is just ludicrous. No, that isn't happening in any shape or form. It would take years to accomplish such a task in a state of peace, let alone war. Gathering your armies at Harrenhal, however, is a wise enough choice. The Brackens and Blackwoods are brought up again, saying why they hate each other is lost to time. No, it isn't. We actually have two stories on why they hate one another. To simplify it, both claim the other was a vassal who usurped the lands and titles. It's difficult to know who speaks the truth, but I find myself thinking the Bracken story to be the closest to the truth. After all, there was a reason the Starks chased out the Blackwoods from their lands. Back in King's Landing, we meet Sir Gawain Hightower. Apparently he showed up last night. In the books, he had been in King's Landing for a decade and was actually in charge of the Gold Cloaks at the start of the war. Why Alicent decides to send him with Kristen makes no sense. She thinks the plan is risky and so wants her brother to die? Speaking of, Gawain never sets foot outside King's Landing. His story is spent in the city in its entirety of the events. Over in Dragonstone, we have a small council scene, nothing inaccurate, but Rhaenys gets up and opens her dumb mouth, talking about how Rhaenyra wears the crown of King Jaehaerys, arguably the best king Westeros ever had. Someone needs to tell her that is not how crowns work. Putting that shit on does not make you smart. It's scenes like this that make me incredibly sexist. Next scene, we are at Driftmark. Corlys being here seems odd, as he would be on Rhaenyra's small council advising her, and them talking in the rain and mud seems silly. Finally, Corlys voices his displeasure of Joffrey and Rhaena being his heirs, seeming to conflict because he was very supportive of Luke being his heir, even though he would be just as ignorant in how to sail while he was alive. Just pick one to be your heir and be done with it, you dumbass. Dragonstone time again, and we see Rhaena looking out to the sea, seeming to be having the worst day ever. Piss off. She's again insulted how she is being treated, yet for some reason learning that she is also to escort dragon eggs changes her mind. Not being with the princes or baby dragons, but these unhatched eggs do it? Allow me to repeat myself. Piss off, Rhaena. Eventually, we get to see Aegon playing dress up in the armor of the first Aegon the Conqueror. They say it's Valyrian steel. I take some issues with that. First off, it's mentioned that Aegon's sword is made of Valyrian steel, his crown as well, but nothing in regards to his armor. I know the showrunner made the mistake of saying Aegon was from Old Valyria. I like to assume that was just a slip of the tongue, because the Doom of Valyria takes place roughly 70 years before Aegon was born. While Valyrian steel was more common, a full suit of armor made of it and not being mentioned is crazy. Likely only the wealthiest of the Valyrian Dragonlords would have it, which the Targaryens were not. They were very minor nobility. The only set of Valyrian steel armor we know about is owned by Euron Greyjoy, who presumably found it in the ruins of Valyria, though we don't know for sure. A lot of mystery in that. Jumping to Sir Dick Cheese and Criston, they are spotted by Baela Targaryen, who then later tells everyone that she saw Criston specifically. Quite impressive that she recognized him, but not impossible. Though I would say, since she did recognize him as Criston Cole, why didn't she burn him alive? Yes, they ran into the trees to get away from her, but she was close enough to where spitting fire would have taken out a very important adversary. Maybe she didn't want to start a forest fire, but I don't know if I buy that. We can skip the rest of the small council meeting, as well as Daemon's dream sequence at Harrenhal. Though I will say, the fucking prophecy for him is you will die here. What happened to more abstract prophecies like the prince who was promised or half of the useless shit Helena has been saying? And why are all the people who see the future just so fucking weird? I swear, if this is a holdover from what happened to Bran from season 8, then this can just fuck right off. Now, I can finally tackle easily the worst scene in the show at the moment. Yes, worse than Rhaenys demolishing the dragon pit. Rhaenyra, after having read the letter from Alicent, decides to speak to Mysaria and hatch a plan to sneak herself into King's Landing in order to speak with her in person. No, fuck no! This is the dumbest shit I have ever heard of. I was annoyed when Otto risked his own life going to Dragonstone twice in the first season. I was irked when Daemon went himself to King's Landing to organize blood and cheese. But this shit, it is easily one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in the history of the franchise. I want to be clear, I at least gave Rhaenys bullshit scene a season 6 pass on writing, but this is on the level of season 8 and the shit-stained writing we are subjected to. There is no reasonable justification. Some people defend this scene, praising the dialogue between the two, and first off, it isn't even that great, especially since it now reminds me of how this shit started in part due to Alicent misunderstanding a stupid-ass prophecy that didn't need to be included. And even if I was to get down on my hands and knees and praise this scene as some of the best written moments ever put to film, it would still be shit. Because for this scene to happen, you need to sacrifice the intelligence of Rhaenyra and Alicent, along with further demolishing Alicent as a character. Rhaenyra should have never come to the conclusion that speaking to Alicent like this was a good idea, for even in the best case scenario, if she did turn Alicent to her side, Alicent could do nothing. She is not the queen, she is the queen dowager, with little if any real influence on anyone of importance at this moment. Had she been convinced to change her ways, she could do almost nothing except maybe sabotage the Greens, but good luck convincing her to actively work against her own sons and risk their lives to the Blacks. So any sort of justification for this scene is built on quicksand, for its mere existence is weak. Oh, but don't worry, it gets worse. At the end of this spectacular scene, despite Rhaenyra threatening to kill Alicent, she simply gets up and walks away. And of course, Rhaenyra doesn't get the fuck out of there as soon as possible, since Alicent very well could be going to summon the guard to have her arrested. No, instead she stares blankly into the fire. These are not characters anymore. They are just pieces put into place by writers to attempt to look good. And tell me, why the fuck doesn't Alicent make any attempt to summon the guard to arrest Rhaenyra? Her goal right now, as stated by both Rhaenyra and Rhaenys and herself, is to end the war with as little bloodshed as possible. Capturing Rhaenys objectively is the best way to end this war, and because of this, all the deaths that will come after, not just the extras who fight in the battle and die in the thousands, but all the characters as well with names who are important, their deaths are on her. She could have ended it all and saved so many. But now, the worst war in Westeros history will continue on, all because the writers were too desperate to have this useless scene. And to those of you who love it, who think that the breaking of the characters still justifies it, I want to offer you an alternative. Cut back to when Rhaenyra was reading the message sent by Alicent. The camera pans around and we suddenly see Alicent in the same room, speaking the words that are on the note. Rhaenyra does not respond, staying focused on the letter, telling the audience that Alicent isn't really there. Once finished, Rhaenyra writes her own letter and has her maester send it off to King's Landing. We cut to Alicent reading it, and now Rhaenyra is in King's Landing, speaking the words she sent. Now that it is established to the audience neither is actually in the other's location, we can start to mess with things a bit, having the two talk to each other directly but changing location whenever the other one speaks. Here you can interpret it as a summarization or adaptation of what they wrote to one another rather than word for word. Boom, you get your scene, and it doesn't ruin the intelligence of either character. Time would be a bit iffy, but if you show Rhaenyra sending this letter early in the episode after her talk with Rhaenys, and Alicent reading it at the small council, you could imply that this conversation had been going on between the two throughout the episode, and before Rhaenyra makes her final decision on if she is to release the dragons, she reads the final response from Alicent. Is it perfect? No. I'm sure there are some issues with it, but at least the characters are not sacrificed for it. I'm done with this piss-poor episode. And to the rest of you, be safe, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.